You ever get that uneasy feeling? Like petty trouble is about to explode in the worst way. That was me staring at the wreckage of my mailbox yet again. Splintered wood, bent steel, and envelopes scattered in the ditch like party confetti. Before we get started, comment which country you're tuning in from. Let's see how far this story travels. I lived on the edge of a quiet neighborhood, but quiet stopped being accurate when the HOA picked up a new watchdog, Milton Craig. He wasn't actual law enforcement, but he dressed the part. Safety vest, radio clipped on his belt, even bogus citations tucked in his clipboard. The guy strutted around like a wannabe sheriff with way too much time on his hands. At first, I figured the smashed mailbox was a random accident. Maybe a truck brushed it, so I replaced it with a standard post and box. 2 weeks later, it was destroyed again. Broken post, crushed metal. That's when I started paying closer attention. Neighbors whispered Milton had it out for me because I wasn't afraid to challenge HOA rules. He'd griped about my grass height and where I parked my pickup. But going after my mailbox? That seemed childish, even for him. By the third time, I was furious. Mailboxes are federally protected under Title 18, Section 1705. It's a federal crime to damage one. I contacted the HOA president. And guess who walked into the meeting with a smirk about my weak construction? Milton. He even joked that if I built it properly, it wouldn't fall over. That was my first real clue. His old truck had a dented bumper with paint scratches that looked an awful lot like the color of my mailbox. Coincidence? Maybe. But my gut said otherwise. So I installed a wildlife camera aimed squarely at the box. If Milton wanted to keep playing bumper cars with my property, I was going to catch him. Sure enough, the next week at 6:14 a.m., when the street was dead quiet, his dented pickup crept down the road. He swerved just enough to clip the box. Wood shattered, letters flew, and he kept driving like nothing happened. I nearly laughed, watching the footage. The self-appointed HOA cop was literally committing a federal crime in broad daylight. At the next meeting, I stood and calmly presented my proof. "Here's Milton destroying federal property," I said, holding up my phone. Karen, the real HOA president, shifted uncomfortably in her chair. She always defended Milton like he was her guard dog. Right on cue, she said, "Maybe the video isn't clear. Could be anyone." I paused, zoomed in, and there was Milton's vanity plate, sharp as crystal. The room fell silent. He just folded his arms, smug like he was untouchable. That's when I knew the HOA wouldn't hold him accountable. If I wanted justice, I had to outsmart him. So I researched reinforced mailboxes. County code said posts couldn't exceed 4 inches in diameter and had to be breakaway friendly, but there was wiggle room. I got creative. A steel core post hidden in decorative brick, hollow enough to meet code but strong enough to stop a truck. On top, a heavy-duty locking mailbox rated indestructible. Neighbors watched as I built it, curious. "Upgrading?" one asked. I smiled. "Just making sure it lasts this time." When finished, it looked like a normal, elegant brick mailbox. Nothing unusual, but inside, it was a fortress. I didn't wait long. A week later, sipping morning coffee, I heard it. The unmistakable crunch of metal meeting brick, followed by screeching tires and a man screaming in pain. I walked out calmly, mug in hand. Milton's truck was buried in my new mailbox, hood crumpled, airbags deployed, steam rising like smoke. And there he was, clutching his arm, cursing. I stood on the lawn, sipping while he raged beside his wreck. "What the hell did you do to your mailbox?" he yelled, spittle flying. I raised a brow. "Built it to code. Can't help it if you can't drive." Karen came storming down the street in her robe, hair wild, barking, "This is outrageous! You set a trap for him. This is entrapment, and I'll report you for unsafe conditions." I nearly laughed. Unsafe? He's the one who rammed federal property 3 times. I lifted my phone, already recording. The lens caught his smashed plate, my solid mailbox, and Milton's meltdown. Minutes later, Two cruisers pulled up, lights flashing. One officer examined the mailbox, then asked, "Did you reinforce this illegally?" "No, sir," I said, handing over the paperwork I had ready for weeks. County Code 1408, 4-inch breakaway post, all compliant. Purchased from an approved vendor, double-checked with Public Works. He nodded, impressed. "Looks good." Karen lunged in, pointing at me. "He's lying! That mailbox is a weapon! He targeted Milton!" The officer turned to her. "Ma'am, the only crime here is destruction of mailboxes, which is a federal offense under Title 18, Section 1705, and crashing into it, that's your friend's problem." Milton paled. "Wait, federal offense?" "Correct," the officer replied. "Up to 3 years in prison plus restitution?" Karen's jaw dropped. I sipped my coffee, letting the silence sting. Officers cuffed Milton on the spot, reading his rights while neighbors filmed with their phones. Karen tried to protest, but nobody cared. As a tow truck hauled off Milton's mangled pickup, the officer handed me his card. "If the HOA bothers you, call me directly. You've done everything by the book." I nodded. "Thank you, officer." Funny thing about bullies, sooner or later the law hits back harder. And that morning Milton and Karen finally learned what happens when karma shows up in uniform.